can't see me, you Stevie. Wondering how I reach more evolutions than Eevee and make it look easy.
What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Arnie the Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, we're going to be talking about, with full spoilers, NYX #4, written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanzig, with art by Enid Balam, colors by Raul Angelo, and letters by Joe Sabino. Also, if you enjoyed the content here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss out on any videos. Also, if you enjoy the video, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel out, keeps us in the algorithm, keeps the video alive in the hearts and minds of YouTube, and, well, it's just also a really nice thing to do. Remember how the Stepford Cuckoos are working with characters like Empath, one of the OG Hellions, as well as the artist formerly known as Hellion, now known as the Krakoan? One of the things I wondered about when it was initially revealed is, how does Sophie fall into all this? Because her other four sisters, they are seemingly all in with this whole new quiet council thing. Like, this isn't like some deal where, you know, they've been roped into it or Empath is exerting any will over them. No, this is something that they are actively drawn into. But for whatever reason, Sophie seemed to be an outlier. But as it turns out, that is not the case. She is very much not an outlier. Yes, Sophie Cuckoo is complicit in all of this, and what makes things even more interesting is not just the fact that she's involved. Of course she's involved. She's a part of a telepathic hive mind, so yeah, it actually is not really as major of a shock to the system that she is actively working as a double agent, trying to get Kamala Khan roped into the whole shenanigans so that the Krakoan can sacrifice her on live television in an effort to kick off a revolution in mutant kind. The Krakoan has been systematically assassinating human targets across the entire city. And not only has he been doing that, he's also done this in such a way that it literally creates an X symbol on the map, and he is preparing to strike once again, and in an effort to kick off this revolution. And this is all really in an effort to try to take over New York, to make a new Krakoa, which I don't know how well it's gonna work out. I don't think it's gonna work out, but we'll see. Before I take it too much further, I do want to take a moment to interject and let everyone know of something special that we're going to be doing to celebrate hitting 100,000 subscribers. It's going to be a giveaway. We did one celebrating 5 years of Blerd Without Fear, and now that we have hit 100,000 subscribers, we're going to do another one, and it's going to be something very similar to the previous one, but we're doing it differently. We're going to do it's going to be a 1 day only. We're going to be doing it live on the Blerd Cave this Saturday, November 2nd. And for those who don't know, the Blerd Cave streams live every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. And during the show, we are going to give away, well, I was going to say a PlayStation 5 or an Xbox, but we're going to let it be winner's choice. Whoever wins, that's what they get. Though I will say there will be some caveats on who can win. You have to live in the contiguous United States. That means you have to be living on a part of the United States that is actually connected to the rest of it. So apologies to all my Islander Americans out there. I apologize. It's one of those things. Shipping is a for stuff like that. So yes, if it's got to come out of my pocket, yeah, sorry. That said, yes, there will be one winner for that console, and you have to be at the Blerd Cave in order to win. You can't just show up for a few seconds and leave. You actually got to be there for the whole thing, because I'm not going to pick a winner who is not actively present in the chat. Anyway, I just wanted to put that announcement out there. Now I'll talk about the console giveaway more when we get to November 2nd's edition of the Blerd Cave. So I'll see you all there. Anyway, I've held this up enough. Let's get back to the video. All the while this is going on, we know that Prodigy is still musing on what his next move should be. And even as we go through this issue, you can tell he has been uncertain since the fall of X. Since the fall of Krakoa, he has not known what his next move should be, and that should be very alarming considering that Prodigy is one of the smartest people on the planet. He literally knows everything everyone else knows. His psychomimetic abilities that allow him to transfer the knowledge that other people have to himself and be able to maximize that knowledge is an ability that you would imagine gives him a lot of opportunity to know what his next move should be, but that's just how uncertain times are for mutants in the From the Ashes era. While he was accused by Sophie Cuckoo of giving up the fight, in truth, he fights back every day, just in his own way. It may not be with fist or with guns or with other weapons or any kind of other mutant know-how that he has, but one of the hallmarks of this comic, probably one of the unsung heroes in the 4 issues we have gotten thus far, is the graffiti we see across New York. It actually pops up more often than you might imagine. We see graffiti depicting all kinds of different things across the city. And in the previous issue, we even saw a memorial for a fallen mutant. And, it was to wonder who did this. And while one could just as easily say, oh, some random mutant probably did it. No, the answer is that it was all very likely Prodigy using what is effectively street art activism in order to raise awareness. And the thing is, street art activism, graffiti activism, whatever you want to call it, it is something that has been a thing in real life for as long as graffiti has been a thing, and even kind of predates graffiti like in a traditional sense. But using art to raise awareness to those who are oppressed that there are better times ahead, that maybe there is something around the horizon, maybe you should stand up and fight. These are things that have existed for a very long time, and Prodigy is using street art in order to uplift mutant kind in the only way he knows how to at this precise moment. And while this issue focuses on him specifically, Prodigy is taking this opportunity to try to hammer out the imperfections of the binary mutant argument. The argument that there are only 2 modes for mutants, and it's to be hated and feared, and then to be begrudgingly allowed to sit at the table, albeit at the kids' table. Mutants either A, get to be the heroes when humanity allows them to be, basically begging for scraps from the humans' table, or standing up for themselves and just take what is owed to them by force. It's the classic Charles Xavier's dream versus Magneto's revolution argument that has existed going all the way back to the 1960s. Why is it that mutants are always hated and feared? Why can't mutants ever exist outside of living in fear of persecution or being useful pariahs? And why is it whenever they do stand up for themselves, they're seen as evil? And honestly, I feel like this bit of commentary is probably going to float over many an X fan's head, and I say that because, well, yes, a lot of us who are X-Men fans, we know that, yes, the X-Men are an allegory for civil rights and treating people the way you want to be treated, and acceptance and tolerance, and allowing people to live and be themselves, without fear of being attacked or harmed, or in worse cases, killed. Yeah, we all know that. I think we all on some level know this, but I think a lot of times some of us tend to forget what the story is about. Like, yeah, it's all well and good to say that this is the allegory, but it's a whole other thing to actually see it and understand it. Knowing and understanding, 2 completely different things. And that is something I saw a lot during the Krakoan era, the very same precious Krakoan era that everybody seems to claim they universally loved. But in truth, I remember when the Krakoan age first kicked off with House of X #1, I actually can go back and look at a lot of the comments I used to receive on my videos. I'm actually going to challenge you to go back and weed through some of my comments and some of those older videos. Go back and look at them. You'll see a lot of people who are very upset at the prospect of the X-Men seemingly no longer being the heroes, that the X-Men are being too selfish, looking out for themselves and not for their fellow man. Yes, I used to get these comments all like to the point that I just didn't even respond to them. I think I tried at first to try and like talk some sense to these people, but no, these were people who clearly did not actually ever read X-Men comics. These were people who, yes, while they may have purchased those comics, they didn't read them. They just stared at the pretty pictures. They did not read the words that accompanied those pictures. And I say that, and not just on my channel, I saw it on other people's channels, Dopesville and Comics Explained and, you know, Comic Pop and various other places where X-Men was being talked about. A lot of these people who were commenting on these videos didn't get it. A lot of people kept saying the same thing. The X-Men are acting like villains. And I'll just go ahead and say right now, people who in many cases let their own privilege get in the way of being able to see the forest for all the trees, they are usually blinded to this very same mutant binary. As a matter of fact, they are often blind to the fact that mutants have tried on multiple occasions and failed to integrate and live peacefully among humans, and once again failed on multiple times, and not because of their own actions, but because humans just did not want that to happen. They willfully acted in hatred and ignorance and did not allow them a proper opportunity to do so. And whenever mutants tried to distance themselves peacefully from humanity, they're always hunted down and persecuted. Mutants have long been forced to live under the rule of separate but equal, an IRL law whose roots began in the 1890 Separate Car Act that mandated black people must ride in separate train cars from white passengers, and was actually later adopted in what is effectively one of the most infamous Supreme Court case rulings in the history of the United States in 1896's Plessy versus Ferguson, that further mandated that such rules were perfectly fine and normal if black people were entitled to the same things as whites, which we all know in practice was not actually the case. The law would last in an actual effective state from 1896 until about 1954's other most, I would say, infamous and most important case in United States history, Brown versus the Board of Education, Supreme Court ruling that mandated that no, separate but equal does not work, especially in terms, at least in this particular case, they were talking about the education system having segregated schools, black people going to one school, white people going to another, because as we know, as the original rule stated, if these things are equal, then yes, it's perfectly okay to segregate these two things. But that was not the case. And even though technically that ruling from Brown versus the Board of Education was handed down, we still feel the effects of separate but equal even today, if not in legality, more so in the hearts and minds of those who still pine for those old times. That said, yes, that is what the X-Men lived through, although it's not necessarily an actual Supreme Court mandated thing. No, there have been instances in the X-Men's history where mutants have been legislated in such a way. So yes, that is what the X-Men have been living through, what mutant kind as a whole has been living through since the 1960s. They have been living under the rule of separate but equal. They are not allowed to have the same things that other people do. And when they are allowed, they are, well, yes, on the surface level, they're supposed to be treated as though, yes, these things are exactly the same. They are not. And we see in the wake of the fall of the Krakoan era that homelessness is spiked among mutants because they have no home. Jobs are hard to come by because people don't want to hire mutants, and when they do, they have to settle for the lowest wage earning jobs humanly possible. We've seen this in Gail Simone's Uncanny X-Men. We have seen it here in this very NYX series, and I'm sure it's going to pop up in other places here or there. So yes, for those thinking I'm reaching away too far to make this analogy, no, it is very much the case. Like, if you don't see it, that just proves my point of your biases and your privilege. At the end of the day, when it comes to this particular aspect of the comic, the X-Men, by their very existence, are the very definition of separate but equal to humanity. They're lucky if humans even acknowledge their right to exist that much. So when the X-Men and all the rest of mutant kind banded together to stand up for what was right, to fight for their right to exist, suddenly both humans in the Marvel Comics universe and in real life became a meme. Because people who are either oppressors or those who are comfortable in the presence of oppressors, so long as they are not the ones being oppressed, often tend to see others as standing up for themselves as morally reprehensible for some reason. I don't understand it, but the point is, while Prodigy never directly has his clapback moment at Sophie Cuckoo for her remarks to him being comfortable in the presence of oppression, his narration makes it clear. The addressing of the brotherhood dynamic and why mutants are not allowed to have brotherhood, because for humanity, it means what it says on the tin, but for mutants, it always equals evil. He knows where this road goes, and it goes precisely where he assumes. Back to the same two songs on the jukebox since 1963. Make yourself small and play nice with the humans, or stand up for yourself and be feared. Despite lacking interest in helping Kamala fight back against the Krakoan after everything she told him, and decides to sit out on the attack against the Krakoan, and until he sees the Krakoan, his former teammate Hellion, running roughshod on Miss Marvel, it's then that he decides that maybe he should step into action. And while the Krakoan, formerly known as Hellion, is a powerful telekinetic declaring himself an Omega-level mutant, though I believe he's in this moment just posturing for the cameras who think he is Magneto, the Krakoan is going well and out of his way to look like Magneto, even though he's not Magneto. He is affecting Magneto-isms, and he's even regurgitating some very iconic lines from Magneto, ranging from House of X #1, "You have new gods now," and also referencing the X-Men arcade game, telling Kamala Khan, "Welcome to die." Either way, if Hellion has been up-jumped officially to Omega level, then good on him. I'm all okay with that. But honestly, the way I read this, I feel like this is just him posturing and no more, no less. Otherwise, I do believe if he has been up-jumped to being an Omega level telekinetic, I'm sure Exodus would like to have some words with him. Either way, Hellion, despite his quotey fingers Omega telekinetic abilities, he is no match for even Prodigy, who, while he doesn't have any physical power manifestations, he has access to everything he's ever learned. Like how to fight like a Wolverine or a Spider-Man, how to be as accurate as a Cable or a Domino, all the knowledge of virtually every X-Man or Avenger, or even Young Avenger he's ever been within 20 or 30 feet of. And this isn't his first rodeo with Hellion either. They butted heads all throughout the Academy X arc of the new X-Men comics, even up into the Craig Kyle Chris Yoss era of the new X-Men series. And while Prodigy handily defeats Hellion using nothing more than sheer ingenuity, this still leaves Sophie Cuckoo on the run from the rest of the new Quiet Council, because she has, for the most part, made her allegiance clear that she isn't on the side of the Quiet Council. She may have helped them get as far as they've gotten, and even so far as helping spread the message of what the Krakoan is doing in an effort to get all of those journalists and news cameras and TV stations to tune in to up-jump what the Quiet Council is attempting to do. Either way, she does see the new Quiet Council for what they are. An empath is even starting to let his calm, laid-back demeanor slip, because that is something that is also indicative of him as a character. The fact that he is a petulant child, and he is a sociopath through and through. Any emotion you see him showing is only what he wants you to see, and it's only when he feels he has been slighted or betrayed in some way is when he actually lets his true emotion show. And it's in this very issue where we get to see it. And very likely with the next issue having focus on Sophie, we'll see the fallout of her seeming betrayal of the new Quiet Council, how Empath is going to respond. But before we get to those things, we are also going to see that Prodigy has been taken into custody, presumably alongside Hellion, but we never actually see Hellion taken into custody, just Prodigy. But when the police arrive and the Grey Malkin troops show up, he is presumably still there. So we'll just kind of have to wait and see on that one. I don't know how this will play into the upcoming events of the raid on Grey Malkin, but we do know that that is going to be a big thing, that there's going to be a little bit of a tiff between the Uncanny and the adjectiveless X-Men in regards to the Grey Malkin prison, which for those of you who have not been keeping up, Grey Malkin prison is the old Westchester mansion. It's been redesigned and reworked into a jail for mutants. And what we do know is that that is Prodigy's next destination. Whether the rest of the NYX crew are able to step in and save him from that fate is another story. We know that Kamala Khan gets away. We know that a Null is still out there, though he has aligned himself with the Morlocks. And we also know that Wolverine, Laura Kinney, she is still out there somewhere. She is running the street. She is very likely going to get involved. It seems like there's going to be a convergence of all of our NYX principal characters, basically converging on each other and maybe, hopefully, helping a brother out of a tight spot.